The long queue. Grace left her flat at 8 in the morning. The sky was grey, but it was not raining. The street was cool and the shops were just opening. Grace walked quickly because she wanted to stop at the bakery before work. She did not have breakfast at home. She only drank half a cup of tea and left. Now she was hungry. There was a small bakery near the bus stop. Grace liked it because the bread was warm in the morning. The woman behind the counter always said hello, even when the shop was busy. Today, the shop was very busy. Grace stopped outside the door. There was a queue. Not a small queue, a long one. 6 people stood inside the shop and 4 people stood outside. Grace looked at the time on her phone. 8:07. Her bus came at 8:25. She had time, but not a lot. Grace stood at the end of the queue. A man in front of her held a newspaper under one arm. A woman behind her had a child in a red coat. The child looked into the bakery window and pointed at the cakes. "I want that one," the child said. "After school," the woman said. Grace looked through the window too. There were cakes, rolls, and small brown bags on the counter. Behind the glass there were only 3 loaves of brown bread left. Grace wanted brown bread. She wanted to make lunch at work. Nothing special, just bread, cheese, and a tomato. But she liked that bread. It was soft inside and dark on the outside. The queue moved slowly. One person bought coffee. One person bought 6 rolls. One person asked many questions about a cake. Grace looked at her phone again. 8:12. The queue moved 1 step. Inside the shop, the air was warm. Grace could smell bread and coffee. Her stomach made a small sound. The man with the newspaper turned around. "Long queue today," he said. "Yes," Grace said. "Very long." "Friday morning," he said. "Everyone wants bread." Grace smiled a little. The door opened. 2 people came out with paper bags. The queue moved again. Now Grace could see the counter clearly. Only 2 loaves of brown bread were left. A woman at the counter bought one. Now there was one. Grace looked at the last loaf. "Please stay there," she thought. The man with the newspaper went to the counter. "Brown bread, please," he said. Grace felt worried. The woman behind the counter picked up the last loaf. Then the man looked at it and shook his head. "Sorry," he said. "Not that one. White bread, please." Grace felt better. The last brown loaf stayed on the shelf. The queue moved again. Now there were only 2 people before Grace. The child in the red coat was still looking at the cakes. The woman behind Grace looked tired. She held a small shopping bag in one hand and the child's hand in the other. "Busy morning?" Grace asked. The woman smiled. "Very busy," she said. "My father is coming for lunch and I forgot to buy bread yesterday." Grace nodded. The queue moved 1 more step. Then the card machine stopped working. The man at the counter tapped his card once. Nothing. He tapped it again. Nothing. The woman behind the counter looked at the small screen. "1 moment," she said. Grace looked at the time. 8:18. The bus came at 8:25. The man took out his wallet and started looking for coins. 1 coin, 2 coins, 3 coins. Then he dropped 1 on the floor. The child in the red coat picked it up and gave it back to him. "Thank you," the man said. The woman behind Grace said, "Good girl." Grace looked at the last brown loaf again. It was still there. At last, the man paid and left. The next customer only wanted coffee. That was quick. Then it was Grace's turn. "Good morning," The woman behind the counter said. "Good morning," Grace said. "The brown bread, please." The woman reached for the last loaf. Then Grace heard the woman behind her speak quietly to the child. "I hope they have one more." Grace turned her head. The woman saw Grace looking and gave a small, tired smile. "It is okay," she said. "We can buy white bread." Grace looked at the brown loaf on the counter. It was not big, but it was not small either. She looked at the time. 8:21. Then she looked at the woman behind the counter. "Can you cut it in half?" Grace asked. The woman behind the counter looked at her. "Yes," she said. "Of course." Grace turned to the woman behind her. "Do you want half?" The woman looked surprised. "Are you sure?" "Yes," Grace said. "Half is enough for me." The woman behind the counter cut the loaf into 2 pieces. She put each half into a small paper bag. Grace paid for her half with cash. The woman behind her paid for the other half. "Thank you," the woman said. Grace picked up her bag. "It is fine," she said. "I only need lunch." The child looked at Grace's paper bag. "Is that cake?" she asked. "No," Grace said. "Just bread." The child made a face. Grace laughed quietly. Outside, the air felt cool again. Grace walked fast to the bus stop. Her bus was already coming down the road. She put the paper bag under one arm and raised her hand. The bus stopped. Grace got on and found a seat near the middle. She looked at the time. 8:25. Just in time. At work, Grace put the bread on her desk. Later, at lunch, she opened the paper bag. The bread was still soft. She made her sandwich in the small kitchen and sat by the window. Half a loaf was enough. Then she took a bite.